The betrayal. The transport shuttle, Harmony, docked with Nexus Prime at exactly 800 Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped onto the station's gleaming deck, her diplomatic credentials glowing softly on her collar. Behind her, Captain Rex Morgan followed in dress uniform, his hand resting casually near his sidearm. The massive space station hummed with activity as representatives from 47 species prepared for what many called the most important summit in galactic history. Elena had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. The war between humanity and the Keth-Ani Empire had raged for 2 decades, consuming entire star systems and leaving millions dead on both sides. Today, she carried Earth's final peace proposal, one that could end the bloodshed forever. The terms were generous, perhaps too generous, but Elena believed in the power of diplomacy to triumph over violence. The station's central amphitheater buzzed with nervous energy as delegates took their assigned positions. The Keth-Ani delegation sat opposite the human representatives, their crystalline forms catching the artificial light and casting rainbow patterns across the walls. Chancellor Zephyr, their leader, stood nearly 8 feet tall, his translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that indicated calm contemplation. Elena approached the central podium, aware that billions across the galaxy watched through quantum-linked broadcasts. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancers as she began her address. Honored delegates, we gather today not as enemies, but as neighbors sharing the same galaxy. Humanity extends its hand in friendship to the Keth-Ani Empire and all species represented here. We propose an end to hostilities, a fair distribution of colonial rights, and the establishment of neutral trade zones that benefit everyone. The chamber remained silent as Elena outlined Earth's proposals. Territorial concessions, technology sharing agreements, even reparations for Keth-Ani losses during the early conflicts. Captain Morgan watched from the gallery, noting how several alien species leaned forward with interest. This could actually work. Chancellor Zephyr rose gracefully, his form shimmering as he prepared to respond. When he spoke, his voice resonated with harmonic undertones that the universal translators rendered into perfect standard. Ambassador Vasquez, your words carry the weight of hope. The Keth-Ani Empire has long sought an honorable resolution to our conflict. We accept your proposal for immediate ceasefire and territorial negotiations. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Elena felt her heart race with excitement. After 2 decades of war, peace seemed within reach. She smiled genuinely as she extended her hand toward Zephyr in the traditional human gesture of agreement. But something was wrong. Captain Morgan noticed it first, a subtle shift in the positioning of the Keth-Ani guards. Their weapons, supposedly powered down for the diplomatic meeting, showed faint energy readings on his scanner. His training kicked in, and he began moving toward the stage. Elena was still reaching toward Zephyr when the Chancellor's form suddenly blazed with violent red light. However, his voice boomed through the chamber. The Keth-Ani Empire cannot ignore the threat that humanity poses to galactic stability. The ambassador froze, her hand still extended. Around the chamber, other alien delegates were rising from their seats, but not in celebration. Their expressions showed no surprise at Zephyr's words. Elena's mind raced as the terrible truth became clear. Evidence has been presented to this assembly, Zephyr continued, his voice now carrying the tone of an executioner, that human colonies have been developing prohibited weapons in violation of galactic law. Evidence that Ambassador Vasquez herself carried detailed plans for deployment of these weapons against civilian populations. That's impossible, Elena said, her voice cutting through the chamber's growing tension. We came here for peace. I carry no such evidence because no such plans exist. But Zephyr was already gesturing to his guards. Search her diplomatic pouch. Captain Morgan finally reached the stage perimeter, but found his path blocked by station security. His hand moved to his weapon, but Elena caught his eye and shook her head slightly. She would face this with dignity. The Keth-Ani guards approached Elena with ceremonial precision. One extended a crystalline scanner toward her diplomatic pouch, the device immediately emitting a harsh alarm. The guard withdrew a small data core that Elena had never seen before. "Impossible," she whispered. "That's not mine. Someone planted that." Zephyr's voice filled the chamber with artificial sorrow. "The evidence speaks for itself. Detailed schematics for quantum warheads, target lists including Keth-Annie nursery worlds, deployment schedules beginning immediately after this summit." Elena looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing the carefully orchestrated expressions of shock and betrayal. This had been planned from the beginning. The Peace Summit was never meant to succeed. It was meant to provide justification for what came next. "I see," Elena said quietly, her voice somehow carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "This was never about peace. You needed a reason to continue the war, and you needed the galaxy to see humanity as the aggressor." Zephyr's form pulsed with satisfaction. "The Galactic Council has reviewed the evidence. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, you are found guilty of conspiracy to commit genocide against the Keth-Annie people." Captain Morgan fought against the security restraints holding him back. "This is murder. She's protected by diplomatic immunity." "Not for war crimes," Chancellor Zephyr replied. He raised one crystalline appendage, and Elena saw the energy weapon forming within his palm. "The sentence is death, to be carried out immediately as a warning to all who would threaten galactic peace." Elena stood straighter, meeting Zephyr's alien gaze with unwavering eyes. "Captain Morgan," she called out, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "Tell them what you witnessed here today. Tell them the truth." The energy blast struck Elena's center mass, the force of it lifting her from her feet and throwing her backward against the podium. The chamber erupted in carefully orchestrated cheers from some delegates, while others sat in stunned silence. Captain Morgan's roar of anguish cut through the noise as he broke free from his restraints, but it was too late. As Elena's body settled motionless on the stage, Chancellor Zephyr addressed the galaxy through the broadcast feeds. "Let this serve as a warning. Humanity's aggression will not be tolerated. The Keth-Annie Empire, with the full support of the Galactic Council, will take all necessary measures to protect civilized species from the human threat." Captain Morgan knelt beside Elena's body, checking for signs of life he knew he wouldn't find. As he closed her eyes, he whispered words that the broadcast feeds wouldn't pick up, but that would echo through human space within hours. "Protocol 7 is active. The gloves are off. Across the galaxy, in monitoring stations hidden within asteroid fields and disguised as research outposts, human observers recorded every second of the assassination. The feeds were already being transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels to Earth Command, where Admiral Sarah Chen was about to receive the worst news of her career and the authorization she had hoped never to use. Elena Vasquez had come to Nexus Prime carrying hope for peace. She died carrying the weight of truth, and that truth would soon transform into the most devastating military response in galactic history. The Keth-Annie Empire and their allies had just made the most catastrophic mistake of their existence. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's extended hand of friendship could be chopped off without consequence. Now they were about to learn what happened when humanity stopped offering hands and started making fists. Captain Morgan stood slowly, Elena's blood on his uniform, and looked directly into the nearest broadcast camera. His words were calm, measured, and terrifying in their certainty. "This is Captain Rex Morgan of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I am the sole surviving witness to the murder of Ambassador Elena Vasquez, killed under false pretenses while under diplomatic protection. I hereby invoke Article 7 of the Terra Accords. Humanity's response begins now." The broadcast feed cut to static, but the message had already been received in every human colony, every Earth fleet vessel, and every hidden military installation scattered across 40 star systems. The age of human diplomacy had just ended in a pool of blood on a neutral station. The age of human retribution was about to begin. The reckoning. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the war room of Earth Command, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of human fleets across the galaxy. The assassination of Ambassador Vasquez had occurred 18 hours ago. For 18 hours, the Keth-Ani Empire and their allies had celebrated their successful deception, believing they had neutralized the human threat and gained galactic support for their war effort. They were about to discover their mistake. All dark fleets report ready, Commander Torres announced from his position at the tactical display. Operation Righteous Fury is green for execution. Chen nodded grimly. Protocol 7 had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for 3 decades. While the galaxy saw human colonies as struggling frontier settlements and human fleets as respectable but limited forces, the truth was far different. For 30 years, humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Dr. Webb. Status on the Quantum Disruption Network. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his console, his face pale but determined. All nodes are active, Admiral. We can sever Keth-Ani communications across their entire empire within 60 seconds of your command. The preparations had begun long before Elena's mission to Nexus Prime. Human intelligence had identified the growing alliance between the Keth-Ani Empire and several other species, all united by their fear of humanity's rapid expansion and technological advancement. Rather than wait for an inevitable betrayal, Earth Command had chosen to prepare for it. Hidden shipyards in the Outer Rim had been producing warships for decades. Research stations disguised as mining operations had developed weapons that pushed the boundaries of galactic law. Most importantly, human agents had infiltrated key positions throughout Keth-Ani space and their allied territories. Admiral, Captain Morgan's voice came through the quantum communicator from Nexus Prime. I'm transmitting the complete records of the summit. Every word, every gesture, every piece of fabricated evidence they used to justify Elena's murder. Chen studied the tactical display showing Keth-Ani fleet positions. They were spread thin across their territory, confident that their surprise attack had crippled human morale and that the galactic community would support their cause. They had no idea that human fleets were already in position around every major Keth-Ani world. Execute Phase 1, Chen commanded. Across the galaxy, the hidden human fleets emerged from stealth simultaneously. In the Keth-Ani home system, the dreadnought Retribution uncloaked directly above their capital world, its massive form blocking out the sun as it transmitted a simple message: surrender or face the consequences. Similar scenes played out in 37 star systems as human forces revealed their true strength. The Keth-Ani Empire discovered that humanity hadn't been building exploration vessels and colony ships for the past decade. They had been building the largest military fleet in galactic history. On Nexus Prime, Captain Morgan watched the emergency broadcasts with grim satisfaction. Keth-Ani news feeds showed panic as their military command tried to understand how human fleets had appeared in their most heavily defended systems without warning. But the true masterstroke wasn't the fleet positioning. Dr. Webb activated the Quantum Disruption Network, and suddenly every Keth-Ani communication system went silent. Their coordination, their command structure, their ability to mount a unified response all disappeared in an instant. Phase 2 initiated, Webb reported, broadcasting the truth. Every functioning communication system in the galaxy began receiving the complete, unedited recordings of Elena's assassination. Not the sanitized version the Keth-Ani had distributed, but the full truth showing their deception, their planted evidence, and their cold-blooded murder of a diplomat under protection. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Species that had supported the Keth-Ani cause began withdrawing their backing as they realized they had been manipulated. Several minor species that had suffered under Keth-Ani domination saw their opportunity and declared independence. On the crystalline world of Fourth Prime, the insectoid Vrex delegation watched the broadcasts with growing anger. Their own ambassador had been executed by the Keth-Ani years earlier under similar false pretenses. Now they understood they weren't alone in their suffering. Admiral Chen. The message came through quantum channels. This is Hive Mind Coordinator Zix of the Vrex Collective. We offer our fleets in support of your righteous cause. Similar messages poured in from across the galaxy. The Epsilon Traders Union, the Nomad Fleet, Even several worlds within Kethani territory itself began reaching out to humanity. What had been planned as an isolated war against Earth was becoming a galactic uprising against Kethani oppression. Chancellor Zephyr, trapped in his command center on the Kethani homeworld with human ships overhead, finally attempted to communicate. His message, transmitted on emergency frequencies, reached Admiral Chen within the hour. Admiral Chen, surely we can resolve this through negotiation. The death of your ambassador was regrettable, but war benefits no one. Chen's response was broadcast to the entire galaxy. Chancellor Zephyr, you murdered our ambassador while she offered you peace. You fabricated evidence to justify your actions. You involved innocent species in your deception. There will be no negotiation until you and your co-conspirators face justice. But humanity's response went beyond military action. Dr. Webb and his team had spent years documenting Kethani atrocities across the galaxy. They released everything: evidence of slave labor camps, records of forced relocations, documentation of resource theft from developing worlds. The galaxy finally saw the Kethani Empire for what it truly was. On Nexus Prime, the station's neutral status crumbled as species after species demanded accountability for their role in Alina's murder. The station administrator, a nervous Centauran named Clix, found himself facing a growing crowd of angry delegates demanding answers. Captain Morgan stood before the assembled representatives, Alina's blood still staining his uniform as a reminder of their betrayal. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, he began. You all witnessed what happened in this chamber. You saw an innocent woman murdered for the crime of offering peace. What will you do about it? The response surprised even Morgan. One by one, delegates began standing and declaring their support for humanity's cause. The carefully constructed alliance against Earth began crumbling as the truth spread. Within 72 hours of Alina's assassination, the Kethani Empire found itself completely isolated. Their fleets were outnumbered 10-1. Their communications remained severed, and their former allies were actively working against them. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Elena Vasquez, named in honor of the fallen ambassador, as she prepared to address the galaxy one final time. Citizens of the galaxy, her voice carried across countless worlds, we did not choose this war. We extended friendship and received murder in return. But we will not allow tyranny to hide behind false diplomacy. Today marks the beginning of a new age, one where justice prevails over deception, where the strong protect the weak rather than exploit them. The final phase of Operation Righteous Fury was the most ambitious. Instead of simply defeating the Kethani Empire, humanity offered every species in the galaxy membership in a new alliance based on actual equality and mutual respect. The Terran Commonwealth would have no single dominant species, no ruling class, no second-class citizens. Chancellor Zephyr's surrender came just 96 hours after Alina's assassination. Standing in the same chamber where she had died, he formally dissolved the Kethani Empire and submitted to galactic justice. The trial would be fair, thorough, and completely transparent. Everything Alina would have wanted. Captain Morgan stood at the podium where Alina had made her final speech, looking out at delegates from over 200 species. In her memory, they were building something unprecedented. A truly democratic galactic government. Ambassador Vasquez believed in the power of peace, Morgan said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. She died because others chose violence over dialogue. We honor her memory not through revenge, but through the creation of the galaxy she dreamed of. The applause that followed echoed through space itself, carrying the promise of a better future built on the foundation of one woman's sacrifice and one species' refusal to let that sacrifice be meaningless. Alina Vasquez had come to Nexus Prime hoping to end a war. In death, she had ended an empire and begun a new chapter in galactic history. The last transmission from her diplomatic mission hadn't been her words of peace, but humanity's declaration that some principles were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The age of human diplomacy was over. The age of human leadership had begun.